Welcome back to the Hill of Roses, guys, where we come once again to celebrate our independent policy movement for progress to bring power to the people. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Heidi Briones, who is a congressional candidate from Oregon's 1st District. Heidi, welcome to the program. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, John. I've been looking forward to it. You've been one of my first endorsements here, and I've been looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, I was really glad to be able to offer that endorsement because I think you have a really, really great platform. And honestly, I just love you as a person. So I'm really happy we finally got together today.
Thanks, John. I love you too.
You know, with that being said, we're not just throwing softballs here. We want to really get to know you and make sure that you're up for this challenge of the job you're going for. And I think before we get into all that like technical, tactical stuff, I really wanted to just get to know you a little bit more for our folks out here. What was your inspiration for running and actually becoming a congressional candidate?
Absolutely. My first job was actually in politics. I worked as a legislative aide when I was in high school every summer, and then I actually worked there as my first job when I became an adult full time. So I'm no stranger to politics and how things work. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I come from that background, and people in my family have been in politics on official levels. So one of my uncle's wife, actually, previous wife, was a state senator. And I learned quite a bit about certain things from her. And I kind of took more of an activist role when I was in college. I started a ACLU chapter on campus.
Very nice.
To inform students of their rights, because students were literally getting arrested on campus because they had no idea about their actual rights with the campus police, and it was a huge problem. So I helped to educate students about that, and I was also part of Students Against War, which was an anti-war group on campus, basically protesting the Iraq conflict and the war, and trying to get military recruiters off our campus. Things like that. So no stranger to be politically active. I did, however, become an educator for a huge portion of time. And mainly the reason why I became an educator was because of financial insecurity in my actual field. Yeah. So I was pre-law coming out of school, and then realized the economy that we were sort of promised when we decided to, go into debt for college just didn't really exist. And so I thought, well, you know what? I really want to travel. So I figured out that I could teach English with a BA. So I went to Taiwan.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I traveled in Asia and just took that time to learn about myself rather than being stuck in law books, which I really appreciate that I did for myself. Through that process, I actually got a master's in teaching. I went back to Asia, lived in South Korea for a while as well, and did some other traveling. Actually got accepted to a PhD program in linguistics, so I was doing that for a while. And how I sort of was inspired was basically I'd heard about universal basic income. Probably, I wish I knew the exact time frame, but maybe 2016, 2017, I started getting kind of into it and curious about it. And then I saw it firsthand. I saw automation rather firsthand when I worked in a Tesla factory. And I heard Elon Musk mention it. And then I was just like, you know what? Automation is definitely going to take a lot of these jobs. I saw it firsthand. We were actually, working in line with machines to try to build these battery modules for the Model 3 push. And Elon's plan was really to have it be fully automated. However, he wasn't able to get it to that point, and we had a production push. So I was seeing that, hey, the actual goal is to fully automate this because humans are expensive. They're a pain in the butt. They need benefits. They're risky. They're risky. They cut into your profit margin. There's so many reasons why wouldn't you want to fully automate this process? You're going to make more money. It's going to be more efficient. It just only makes sense. So I saw it firsthand, and then, stumbled onto Andrew Yang's campaign shortly after that. And I was just like, wow, this is the only person really talking about these pertinent, modern, up and coming issues. And everybody else I felt like was stuck in the past, even if I liked them or they had good policies. I'm just like, well, but then you're not talking about technology. You're not talking about these major things that are happening. So I got super involved and became a volunteer. And when he dropped out, I was just like, oh my gosh, we have to keep this going somehow. What if we don't keep this going? And it just he just becomes a one-off candidate, and people are like, oh yeah, I remember that Yang guy. like, no, like we have to like have people run on, these types of problem solving, more advanced modern issues and policies to keep them going. So I felt compelled. I was like, well, you know what? I'll give it a try. Like it could fail epically. It could go really well, but I'm going to give it my all. And I'm a competitive person. So I've been trying my best to, very least make a massive impact and hopefully win.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'm very glad you ended up doing that, because there's been so many candidates that tried to make sure this movement didn't die. And I will say it's going strong right now. And so I'm really glad you did. And I relate to a lot of your experience. Like, I also was a part of the ACLU in college. I really gained my own political advocacy voice from the inspiration of my own family, who are very politically active. So I really appreciate your journey, because it's really interesting, all the jobs you went through in your career. So, one thing I wanted to focus on next is really, you might see it in the background imagery behind me. It's your district. Yeah. And I want everyone here who's not there, likely because this is an internet stream, to be able to learn a little bit more about your district. What makes it unique, and what are some of the issues that it's facing?
Yeah, I mean, our district is very, very diverse as far as both geography, socioeconomically. It's actually a fairly diverse district. It goes everywhere from the Pearl District downtown all the way down to rural areas of Yamhill County, where it's basically wine country or farmland. And then there's the suburban areas where Nike and Intel campus are, which is probably what we're looking at right here near Beaverton and Hillsborough. Yeah. I live in Hillsborough. And then there's a lot of rural area in between, going all the way out to the coast. There's up north is like Scappoose, and then you go all the way across to Astoria, and then down through Seaside and Cannon Beach. So all of these rural coastal towns are also part of the district. So if you can imagine, I mean, like downtown city to wine country farmland to suburbia to a small coastal beach town.
You got the full gamut.
That's almost everything. Like it's pretty close to being almost every type of socioeconomic or life experience and everything. So it is a very diverse district. It is, however, voting wise, solid Democratic. And has been for a while. There's a lot of issues in our district. There's unemployment is at about 10% all the time, which is huge. Unfortunately, a lot of that is in rural areas who their economies have been hit over and over. And, it's a hard time finding a job when small businesses don't have customers in the town. And that's normally where you would work. So that's one part of the message that I'm trying to get across with some of my policies. And homelessness, of course, is a huge problem all across the country and in the Portland area specifically. Like a lot of West Coast places, a lot of homeless people do tend to come here. We have the social services and shelters set up, and we don't kick them out, at least at higher rates as other places do, and put them on a bus so they actually have a place where they can be. And for the most part, be accepted and have help and have resources. So it's still a major problem. I mean, we need policies that will actually help the homeless population. And of course, you have small businesses. It's a huge small business community. There's retail, there's food service, there's all of that. There's Nike and Intel, which frankly, I don't think need much help. I think they're doing all right.
They're doing just fine.
And then there's the coastal towns who have their own concerns, such as tsunamis. They have to make sure that they have adequate technology and be ready for a tsunami, because that could be devastating for obvious reasons. So then they also struggle economically being in smaller towns and on the coast, especially Astoria, because it's so far out there that a lot of people don't go all the way out there. So that causes, harm to their economy. Not many people going out there just because it's hard to get to and it's far out. So there's so many different issues in my district, which I find very interesting. And it's nice to be able to address all different kinds of issues.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense given the wide range of what your district covers, from suburbia to urban areas to all the way to rural areas. So what are some of the top proposals that you're looking to be able to bring forward to actually address those issues? What would you say are your top 5 issues?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, of course, universal basic income is at the top for me. I don't think that's a surprise to many people at this point, but yeah, so universal basic income, a minimum $1,000 a month per adult. And secondly, I definitely am in favor of a universal healthcare system. Healthcare is a human right, and it's ridiculous that we don't have a fully universal system that everybody can access. So that's huge. I think that the next step, and it could even be the first step in a lot of ways, but would be democracy reform. I think that if we actually make our democracy work for everybody with changes to the voting system, such as ranked choice voting, approval voting, star voting, democracy dollars, which is essentially public vouchers that people can use to donate to campaigns, is massive. Also having a national voting day. There's many things that fall under that would make our democracy more vibrant, more accessible, and frankly, more fun and interesting for people to get involved with. So they felt like they had a choice rather than I'm just always voting for the lesser of two evils, or my vote doesn't count and it doesn't matter. Those are very sad, memes or social, memes that have come up recently, and why we're so apathetic. So I'd like to solve that. Beyond that, I have other policies as well, as far as like climate action. I do think that we should support, technology helping us in, combating climate change. I think that we need to be open to things like thorium. I think that we need to consider, very interesting things that I've been advised on recently with lunar power as opposed to solar power, that we can actually harness more power from the moon than the sun. Very interesting things.
I'll need to look that up.
That aren't being talked about, that fall under the climate action kind of category. I do think we need to address affordable housing. It's a very big concern in the area that I live in. The housing has just gone up on so many different places, with it not matching how much money people are making. And that's a huge problem. So we do need to build more affordable housing. It somewhat addresses the homelessness issue, but we also need the healthcare to address that issue as well. I think that we need, full overhaul on mental health access. I believe that people don't have proper and adequate mental health access in this country. So that's one of the things that I do focus on under the umbrella of healthcare. And if I mentioned really 5, I wasn't counting.
Yeah, I think you did there.
Okay.
You got all 5. And, I really love those priorities in general. It's one of the reasons why I support you so much, is because it really centers on, having power in the form of representation within our country. It focuses on power in forms of economic guarantees. And I think that's really important for us as a nation, for us to be able to make progress on so many other issues. We need to be empowered first to make progress on other ideas, so that our heads are up and focused on the future issues. With that being said, obviously, I think most of the viewers here can see this as common sense. Like, I see this as common sense. We'll explore lunar power more. I think that was a little bit out there. Like, David, I agree with you. Lunar power is an innovative idea. But, how do we actually start to make progress on these things? Like, strategically, let's say you win your election. I think you'll have an easier job once you get to the general election, being able to win there. It's a safe blue district. How do you figure that we can actually get Congress on our side to start making some progress on these issues?
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie to anybody about that. It's not like we're going to walk in as freshman Congress members.
I'm here. It's time.
Like, that's it. Like, you're going to sign my UBI bill in the first 100 days, and that's final. Like, it's just, it's not going to go down that easy. I wish it would, but part of it though is getting a lot of UBI candidates into Congress. I don't think that nobody's going to be able to do it alone. Clearly, you're going to need to have many that support UBI. And I think that, you do have to be able to work across the aisle. You do have to be able to frame it as a nonpartisan issue. You do have to have certain framings for how you talk about this issue in order to actually get it done. And the reality of politics is that that's going to be difficult, because you're going to have, certain people that have ideologies that go directly against the concept of giving people money. And there's going to be a lot to overcome. I think that one strategy that I've thought about is getting a lot of people on board on, for example, one of the democracy reform issues, like National Voting Day, for example, or something that just seems like so common sense, because it is, and it's nonpartisan. It's like, don't you think we have all these other holidays, why not have a holiday for voting, and then everybody can go vote? What is the actual argument against that? What are you going to come up with against that? Like, people just shouldn't have a day off, like one day off? Is that the thing? Or what exactly what's going to be harmful about that? So I think we have to find an issue that's so nonpartisan that we as a UBI caucus or coalition can bring people in on and be like, hey, isn't this great? And then we start making those connections with people to be like, hey, you know what else is a nonpartisan issue actually is universal basic income. Let me explain to you why. Let me frame this with you. Let's work together. What are your concerns? Like, what do you think? Is it the funding? You know, how can we overcome this to get this, you know, done for the American people? Just like we got done National Voting Day together. You know, that was awesome. Everybody loves that. Everybody's like, sweet, a holiday, and I get to go vote now. You know, I mean, we just have to figure out a way to come together on the unifying policies and then work on what I feel like are other unifying policies that are less partisan than people think.
Yeah, I generally like that approach, although I sometimes worry that it's kind of against their own incentives, because if we have a national voting day, more people are voting, and then these people might lose their jobs. So you'd never know in that regard. But
possibly, but how do you frame that? I mean, like
it's a hard sell to your constituents.
Voters, like actual voters being like, I'm against you voting. Like,
yeah, right. I totally agree. It's a hard sell.
Yeah, like I think if we come up with a really good PR campaign and like really had some good media attention on it, you know, and really focused on something like that, maybe it's not National Voting Day, maybe it's another democracy form like you know, approval voting or star voting or ranked choice voting, but whatever it is, like if we can get people to be like, yeah, I disagree with democracy, like that makes them look so bad. And like, even if we don't get it passed with them, like that's going to make them look so bad coming up in their next elections. Yeah.
And I also would say it's a smart idea to kind of do it on a more single issue compared to like saying, let's push for the People Act again, which included like a national holiday, because they could say, oh, there's this one thing we disagree with in the bill, so we can't support it overall. Well, if you just kind of center it on one issue, it's like, it's a straight yes, no. Why don't you support this one issue? And I think that's one of the problems with Congress in general, is they make these like convoluted bills that are too big in a way that it kind of lets people have weasel ways out of agreeing with something that's just common sense. So I like the idea of just focusing on one thing kind of at a time and starting to unlock the levers of power for us to have more policies come forward. With that being said, I kind of wanted to focus now on just your general leadership style. Obviously, in a campaign, you've had a buildup of people being able to support you. How have you tried to work with both the people in your district as well as the people on your campaign? How do you try to be a leader for your group?
Yeah, absolutely. My general thing with leadership is that is a few prongs to it, but in general, you should be willing to do anything that you would ask anybody else to do. So I try to do that as much as possible. Being the candidate, sometimes it's a little difficult, and I obviously need help with things, and there's things that I can't do. But however, I've tried to, you know, be like, hey, I'm willing to do the work. Like I work full time, you know, like I don't have the ability or luxury of working on my campaign full time. So I work on things in between everything else. And that's what I think, you know, a public servant should do as well. You know, they should work hard. They should work very hard. Yeah. They should get breaks like everybody else, but you're a public servant. Like you took on this role to serve your people, and you should think of every single possible way that you can help. I mean, one example is we had a town hall with Bonamici, the incumbent, and people were, you know, asking her things like for help. For a lot of them were technically state issues, but she's supposed to help her constituents. So they were asking her about unemployment insurance help. They weren't able to access their unemployment. And there were a lot of platitudes and not a lot of actual action and solutions, which I would not stand for in myself or, you know, in anybody else that I'm working with, frankly, is like, you have to be willing to go above and beyond and think, okay, how can I do this? Not, can I do this or not? That's not the question. It's like, if something needs to get done, how can we do it? How? And there's always a way. And so I try to have that attitude with anybody that I work with. Like, and sometimes they might get frustrated with me because they'll come to me and they'll be like, I can't do this, Heidi. And I'm like, okay, well, how can we do it?
Still got to get done. Yeah.
And they're like, but we can't because X, Y, Z. And I'm like, interesting, but how can we do it? So what about this? What about that? So sometimes that might be irritating for people working with me or frustrating, but I just don't have any limits to like either what I'm willing to do or what I'm willing to, you know, help people with, or how hard I'm willing to work, because that's what this is all about. It's about working your butt off and figuring out how to get something done and not accepting that we can't do something just because we haven't been able to do it yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that leading by action mindset. I've always said that, the people that are representing us should be working as hard for the working class as the working class works for itself. I really think that's
Absolutely.
first and foremost.
And the working class works for them. They're the ones paying
Right?
their freaking
Yeah,
salaries, right?
exactly. So the last question I want to ask, and before I get into it, I want to let everyone know that we're about to get into some fan questions. So start thinking about those and start posting them below so that we can get into them after this question. But I wanted to hear what your thoughts are of how you would assess just how a congressperson is doing a good job or not. How do you know when they're doing a good job? Like, how did you know that Suzanne Bonamici was not doing a good enough job for the people in your district?
Frankly, if you're a legislator, I look at legislation. So, like, I want to see that you've written, powerful, meaningful legislation, and not just that you're a co-sponsor on other things that other people have written, which is great. It's good to co-sponsor, good legislation. However, I think that you need to have something you're fighting for. What exact legislation are you trying to get passed? And I want to see that you've at least tried, like, at least that you're like, this is my issue. I've been trying to do this. This is why I haven't got it done. And this is why I'm going to, this is what I'm going to change going forward and how we're going to get it done. And these are my ideas. But I just don't see that from a grand majority of these Congress people. I just see them just floating through, just, with their same platitudes or same like, oh yeah, we're going to work on that and we're trying and we're going to, okay, but like, what have you done? Like, I need to see concrete legislation because you're a legislator. Like, that's your job. You can't just co-sponsor other people's bills and, work your language into other bills as well. I want to see that you've written some strong legislation. And if it didn't get passed, that's okay with me. But did you try?
Yeah.
And are you going to keep trying? And how are you going to change your strategy now? Those are the fundamental things that I want to see. And I don't really see that, from most leaders, supposed leaders in the Democratic Party is leadership. I don't really see that leadership. I don't see them taking the reins. I see them mostly following the establishment. And that's on both sides of the aisle. Most people in Congress are followers. They're not leaders. They just follow. Like, they follow Pelosi if they're, in the House, or they follow the other leaders and they just do whatever they say because they're like, I want to keep my career going. Tough. Like, I don't care about keeping my career going. Like, when I'm in there, I'm going to do some things that might upset people, and I don't really care because I'm not fighting for them. I'm fighting for the people.
Yeah, I love that mindset. That was the same like inspiration that I had myself in terms of why I at one point was running for office, is because, my representative Albio Sires, he's only done like 2 pieces of legislation in 12 years, and he's only written like a dozen in total in 12 years. Like, if you're writing only one bill in every year, you're not really doing your job. So I totally agree with you there. It's really just being able to bring forward legislation and what the quality of that is and how you try and champion it. Because I totally agree with you there. Let's now get to some fan questions out here. The first one comes from Nelson Orta. He asks, what do you think is the best way to be able to deal with student loan debt?
I mean, frankly, as somebody who still has tens of thousands of student loan debt, I feel like student loan debt, all of it, not just the actual predatory student loan debt, but also all of it at this time was predatory in some nature. So I would be highly in favor of canceling everything that exists right now and then working to bring down those costs of higher education because it's ridiculous. So I honestly think, and we should also move to K to 14 being free, basically. So a free community college setup, which would allow young people a little bit more time. Let's be honest, like, when you're that young, you don't necessarily know what you want to do.
That's true.
So give yourself a little more time to decide if you want to go into higher education and if it's worth the $100,000 of debt to do so. And a free community college would allow people a lot more time. And obviously, we need to go in and fix what's wrong with the bloated university systems and why they're charging 4 to 5 times as much as they did even just a couple decades ago for nothing. And frankly, it's a lot of administrative bloat that we need to just go in and be like, yeah, this isn't going to happen anymore. We're regulating this. This is illegal now. You can't just be paying all these people to do nothing and just sit on a board and make these decisions for a for-profit university, which essentially is what's happening, is they're making decisions for profit rather than for the students, and that's wrong. And so at this point, I feel like it's become all predatory. Cancel it all, make community college free, bring those costs way down.
Yeah, I really like that approach for higher education in general. And I think some of the people who support like free college education, like public education, I think one of the things they need to consider is that a universal basic income can still be used to do that. Like if you give $1,000 a month, that's more than what the tuition cost is at most public universities. So I think you're already kind of paying for that. And frankly, that 12,000 is higher than that. So you're going to have a little extra gain from that as well. The one thing I would say is, they didn't ask this in this question, but like I like the idea of pre-K to 14. I like that approach because I think that's where we got to start pre-K before higher education, because education's value is more valuable the earlier on in life.
Yeah, and I would go as far to say is that we need actually an Asian model of our kindergartens and preschools, which essentially is a fully bilingual model at this point, which would be what I did when I was in Asia is I would go into kindergartens, and these are private schools, but we could do this on a public level if we wanted to. Basically, we would hire, skilled teachers from other countries, so China or, Latin America, hire some of the best teachers to come in, teach our young people in the mornings, and then we come in and enforce that in the afternoons. Like, hey, this is what she was saying. She was trying to teach you about this, and then they learn it. The next day you come in and you have the same thing, and we could have in one generation, like bilingual Americans, which would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how we are one of the only countries on this earth that really does not embrace being bilingual. We've kind of had English dominant around the world. And I think it's not just knowing the language, but it's actually like the thought process of being bilingual. It's like a critical thinking skill that a lot of people have, being able to interpret language in different ways. And
it's a cultural thing. I mean, how can you be, I feel like you can't be, racist if you know another language is easy,
That's a little blunt.
But seriously though, I mean, it's like once you start learning language, you start learning about that culture. And then once you know things, it's harder to be scared of them. And a lot of prejudice and xenophobia does stem out of fear. And so more education and more knowledge, around language, I think would help that. I mean, it wouldn't kill it completely, of course, but it would definitely help that mindset of the other that we're facing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, let's go to our next question here. This comes from the Fox. I think this is Ben Fox out there. If elected, how do you plan on keeping yourself from being sucked into the machine?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a fear. I think one thing is I don't care about this being my career. So we'll never make a decision based on that, which I think is what happens once you're in there, is you really kind of like it. I mean, you're making like $175K and everybody thinks you're awesome and you get a lot of media press, and then you have people pressuring you to do things because, but next cycle when you're in here, we're going to work on this together. And then, so if you do this for me now, like, wow, you got a long career ahead of you, or we're going to work on this and this. Yeah, I really I don't care. So I think a lot of my decision making will come down to always putting people before politics, always putting people before my career, because I don't care. If I was a one-termer and I got UBI done, boom, I don't care. I don't care.
Right?
Like I'm out of there. Like I'd rather go do something else. I don't care if I would make half as much, as I would make in Congress, or a third of, what I would make in Congress. I don't care. I'm not in it for the fame or the money or for the career at all. It's public service. It's like going into the military or something. And then, it's just like when you go in, you want to help the people in your country. And that should be the same mindset that these people have. It shouldn't be like, this is my ticket to wealth and fame. So just my whole mindset, I guess, it just disgusts me, that whole concept of getting sucked into anything.
Yeah, I wish that was embraced more often. It's one of the reasons why I think term limits is just such an important thing. So it's like, okay, you have a very clear cut time you're here. Otherwise, you're gone. It's your term's up. So
this is your shot. Yeah, get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to our next question here. Justin asks, what regulations would you try to impose on corporations, and would you break up certain companies?
Are you talking about breaking up tech companies?
It could be any industry, but yeah, tech's one example.
I don't think we really, I mean, I understand the spirit of that. I guess I understand like wanting to not have monopolies and all of that. I think that the regulations that I would mostly want to see are ones that either support the environment. So environmental regulations definitely need to be in place. I mean, you can't have people polluting. It's very concerning to me when there's not, firm enough regulations on that. And I think that's one concerning thing about this administration is they rolled back a lot of those. And I understand people's mindset on why they don't like those, but anyway, environmental regulations and also workers' rights. I mean, workers do have the right to a certain standard of, respect, pay, safety, a lot of things that just don't exist in a lot of jobs. So you do have to regulate certain things. If there's no profit incentive, then you have to regulate it. However, I don't really agree with necessarily breaking up companies, because I don't think that really fixes anything, because people essentially are still going to go towards the best company. You can have like a bunch of little companies, but the best one will still win anyway, and the other ones will just close within a few years. So I don't necessarily think breaking them up is the right way to go about it anymore. That was in the past, but now with the way we have technology and demand, it's not really going to work, I don't think. So I would say regulate the environment, regulate workers' rights, but otherwise, I think that we can leave most businesses alone, especially small businesses. I don't want to crush any small businesses.
Okay, well, Justin was happy with your answer there. Let's do 2 more questions before we wrap up and let people know how to help your campaign. So this next question comes from Gabriel Egers. He asks, if you were able to, how would you restructure the tax code to incentivize long-term investment and production over real value of short-term exploitation? Like, how do you get us thinking in a more long-term sense for our economy?
Right. I personally, that's one of the reasons why I like consumption taxes, because I think that, it's been shown that when we try to come after the income or the profit margin of these companies, they find wiggle room around it. So I think that we need to move to more consumption models of taxing, which include obviously a value-added tax. And I think that if we move more towards that, then I think that actually incentivizes businesses in a better way. Because right now they're just incentivized to basically not pay any taxes at all and to just grow and grow and grow. And that does equal short-term exploitation. However, if each stage of production has some sort of tax, then I think that they'll make different decisions. I think that right now each stage of their production isn't hit at all, so they're able to do things that do equal short-term exploitation for workers or have bad environmental consequences. But I think if they're like, oh, hey, I'm going to get that VAT tax if I do this, maybe I should think a little bit more about this, and maybe we won't do that because that's I don't want to pay that tax right now. So let's think of a different way to do it. So I think that moving to a more consumption-based model will help a lot of that.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea in general. I think one other thing I would add is, I've always found it interesting, the idea of inversion with corporations, and like they'll basically push most of their recognition of income offshores. And, when you're an American and you have citizenship in this country, because now our courts have decided that essentially corporations are people, they've gotten free speech rights. So when you're an American overseas, your income is still taxed based on your citizenship. It's double taxed for the nation you're staying in as well as in America. But we don't do that with corporations. So like sometimes they get only the good sides of citizenship without the downsides of it. And so it's something I'd like to explore as potentially,
most of the time.
If you're an American-based company and registered, we should have access to those income streams as well, so that you can't just store all your income in one of these tax havens. That way, I think we can invest more into our communities. But
absolutely.
Let's go with our last question before we let people know how to help your campaign. And I think this is very in that vein. They're asking, how is your campaign doing? I know you're in your final stretch. There's 10 days left until the primary. How are things going?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I haven't been able to commission any polls or anything. No polls are generally run in congressional districts unless someone commissions them. And generally that person is someone with a lot of money who can pay a media company to do it, because frankly, they don't care. They're not going to do it on their own accord because there's no incentive for them. Unless you go to them and pay them directly and, hey, run this poll. Then they're happy to do that. So I wish I knew exactly how. The only thing I can go off of is the metrics that I have. So, I mean, essentially we get about 300 unique visitors to my website every day. We get positive responses via phone banking and text banking. I have new people that I've never talked to that don't even follow me anywhere on social media, send me messages that they voted for me every day. So I wish I knew. I wish I knew exactly where I was at, but I feel pretty good about the progress that we've made, regardless of the result at this point. I feel like we've made a massive dent. Tens of thousands of people heard about me and universal basic income that would have never done it if I wouldn't have run. So that's a win to me as well. So I would overall say it's a win no matter what.
Yeah, I love that mindset in general, because I had even said this yesterday that I thought Andrew Yang won the primary, even though he didn't technically get the nomination, because like two parts of campaigns is like, one, do you get the job? But the other is like, how do you transform the thought process of the area you're representing? Because I think if you can push that forward, it means like, okay, you may not have won this time, but they're going to start putting pressure on whoever gets into power to start working on that.
Yeah.
And it builds up some potential support for a future run. So,
Yang
2024, Heidi 2020 and 2022. Who knows?
Right. There's so many ways to win. I just want to say, don't be discouraged if your favorite person in any race doesn't win. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of ways that people can win.
Okay, well, I think that will do it in terms of our fan questions. Thank you all for attending this stream.
Thank
you. With my promise ahead of time, I'm going to be contributing to your campaign for all the viewers that we've had here live. We have $15 currently in the pocket, so that'll come your way. But I want to let all the people here know how they can help you out. What can they be doing to actually make sure that Heidi wins in these last 10 days?
Yes, clearly donations are important because we're running Facebook ads that need to keep running. So I don't want to have to shut them off. So if we could keep getting donations, then I feel confident in continuing to run the ads that we're running and testing, and that would be very helpful. But of course, if you don't have funds available, it's obviously understandable. So what I would say is, get your fear out of your mind and phone bank for me, because it's really not that bad. It's really not that hard. I wish more people were phone banking. It would really help me out a lot. So if you want to phone bank, you just go to Heidi2020.com/call. There's a training in there. There's a dialer. The script is actually very easy. It's not scary. You basically just have a basic conversation with somebody and get them curious about me. And that's human psychology is a funny thing. Sometimes you just need to hear somebody's name to be aware of them and to consider, voting for them. So I would say, call for me, please. Or if you can't, donate, or vice versa.
Yeah, I totally recommend that as well. That's what I'm going to be doing myself this upcoming week. Is I'm going to be phone banking. I've dropped the links down just for her general website. If you want to be able to make a donation, it's HeidiForCongress2020.com. And I've dropped the link as well for you to be able to phone bank. I'm going to be doing that this week. Heidi had offered the opportunity to maybe phone bank live. We'll see. I have to look a little bit more into the laws if it's allowed for me to record. But if it's possible, I will do that because I think we have to make this push this week to really help her get across the finish line. So Heidi, I want to thank you for being here today with me. I really enjoyed being able to talk with you, and I look forward to having this continuous dialogue in the future. Although I know for the next 10 days you're going to be head down in this district.
Yeah,
but once you win, I hope to have you back on to be able to celebrate with you.
Definitely. That'll be a huge party. So I look forward to it, John. And I'm just happy to have your support. So thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. Well, Rosebuds, I hope you stay safe out there. We have a great schedule this upcoming week, so I really hope you keep tuning in. Tomorrow, we're going to be with Blair Walsingham. She's a candidate also supporting universal basic income in Tennessee's 1st District. Then on Monday, we're going to be talking with Zoltan Istvan. He was a Republican former candidate for president. That'll be a really interesting conversation around transhumanism and bringing universal basic income into the fold of more of a conservative movement as well. Then we're going to be talking with Michael Owens from Georgia's 13th District. He is a very interesting candidate. I think he's really good on democracy reform. I think that's his real strong point. Then we're actually going to be talking to one of your competitors, Amanda Sieb, on Wednesday. So I look forward to having that conversation with her. Then Thursday, we are talking with David Sandbeck from Minnesota's 4th District. And then finally on Friday, we are going to be talking with Jason Call from, again, also in your state, in Washington. I believe he's in the 6th District. No, sorry, not your district. Washington's a different state. I confuse the
It's all
Pacific
the
states.
same.
It's all
They're all
the same,
up
right?
here. It's one
But
state.
he's-
It's Cascadia. Actually, it's a country.
Honestly, they just need to form that
It's a
West Coast
country.
block.
It's just Cascadia now.
You know that West Coast block that Governor Newsom put forward, where it's like Washington, Oregon, and California?
That's Cascadia. I already said that I'm going to run for president of Cascadia.
I love that idea.
If they make it happen, I'm already declared my presidency.
I love it, though.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'll volunteer for that campaign when it happens. I'll move out there. But yes, Washington, not Oregon, which we've talked here with Heidi. Washington 6th District, we'll be talking with Jason Call. So tune in. We have a very great schedule this week, and I'm really glad we got to kick it off with Heidi. So thank you again, Heidi. And everyone, stay rosy out there. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye, guys.